I want to mention one of the myths, though, to start with.
Yeah.
Not a myth, but a step. I want everybody who's watching to remember one thing. The biggest myth you have, not the one that's been sold to you, that hurts you is the average person thinks finance is so complex because, frankly, the industry tries to make it sound complex. They use words that you don't know, so you don't know what to do. You know, what does this mean? And so what happens is we just give them our money and say, deal with it, and we don't realize that system has been set up. It's not an evil system. It's set up by corporations that are looking to maximize profit for those corporations. They're not looking out for the investor because this investor is second, and we think we're first, and we're not. So the first piece is you got to know that you can't wait till you have a ton of money to start investing and think, I'm not an investor. What you got to do is say, rather than my Apple phone, let me own Apple stock. Let me own a piece of all the best companies, not just Apple. I've got to become an owner or I'll always be in scarcity. If you can invest in business, even a small amount, you can grow. And I don't care how small it is, but you got to automate it. There's a gentleman named Theodore Johnson who is amazing. He worked for UPS, started as a driver, never made more than $14,000 total in a year. That was his highest salary in a year. In his old age, he's worth $70 million. And how did he do it? All he did was what I teach is the first step is you gotta take a percentage of what you earn and pretend it's a tax. You're never gonna see that money again. You automate it, it goes straight to the investment account, and you never see it as money you can spend. He did that with 20%. He said, I can't save 5. Somebody in his family said, if there was a tax, you'd pay it, and they made it 20%. When you save 20% and you compound it, its numbers are incredible. So I show people how to do that. But then the problem is, if you do that first step, but you don't do the second step, which is become an insider,
yes,
and understand the rules of the game, then the old adage is a person with money meets a person with experience, the person with experience ends up with your money. I mean, that's how it works. So I'll give you 2 or 3 of the myths real fast. One, this myth that someone says, give me your money and I'm gonna beat the market. It's just a lie. Warren Buffett made it clear it's a lie. Ray Dalio, one of the greatest investors in history. David Swenson, who has taken Yale's money, $1 billion, and converted it to $24 billion in 2 decades, the greatest institutional investor in the world. They've all said it. Warren Buffett flat out said today, he said, listen, in my will, 90% of my money, all that money does not go with any mutual fund, it goes straight into the index. What the index is you get a piece of all the largest companies in the world, but it costs almost nothing to get in. Because over any 10-year period of time, 96% of mutual funds will not even match the market. Now you're paying for a mutual fund. What this means is you hire someone because you say, I have a family, I have a business, I have a life, I'm not an investor. I'm gonna hire someone who's a professional. It makes sense, they would do better than me. Unfortunately, that's wrong. Because what happens is 4% of them will beat the market, but it's not the same 4%. Mm-hmm. So your chances of finding the right one, have you ever played blackjack?
Yes.
So if you play blackjack, everybody knows you play for 21. If you go above 21, you're gone. If you get 2 face cards and they're sitting in front of you and you got a 20 out of 21, and you got the chance to stay or say hit me, if you hit you, there's only one card that'll get you to the other, it's an ace. If your inner idiot says hit me, you have an 8% chance of winning. You have a 4% chance of finding the right mutual fund. It's not gonna happen. So what happens for people is they think they've been sold, we're gonna do better, and they might for a year or 2, but what matters, you live off the long term. You don't live off the year or 2, and they just don't do it. Warren Buffett has a bet right now with Protege Partners, which is a group that does hedge funds, and he said, you can pick 5 hedge funds. You can mold the best of them together. I'm gonna own the market, which costs me next to nothing. You're gonna get the hedge funds, which cost a lot. 10-year bet, who's gonna win? Put up $1 million. Right now, they're 6 years into it. Warren Buffett's at 42%, they're at 12%, right? Oh. Just crazy. So the second thing is after getting terrible performance, people say, well, fees don't really matter, or they'll tell you it's only 1%. And I ask people all the time, how much are you paying? And they go, I don't know, or they'll say 1%. 1% is called the expense ratio. That's like the edge of the sticker price. If you read that 50-page prospectus in your mutual fund, even one of them has 50 pages, which you won't, you'd have a hard time with a PhD figuring it out. In fact, there's a man named Hilton Smith, I quote in the book, who spent 2 weeks, he's got a doctorate as an economist, took him 2 weeks to go through them all and figure out there are 17 different fees. And Forbes says the average fee is 3.12. Now, if you're watching right now, I'm sure I've lost your brain with all these numbers, so let me make it real for you. 1% versus 3%, big difference.
Huge.
Right? Here's the difference. Just like you grow by compounding like Theodore Johnson did, your fees also compound. And people don't know that when they hear that little number. So if you had 3 people and one gets 1% in fees, 2%, the other in 3%, they all get the same return. They start out with $100,000 at 35. For 30 years, they accumulate to 65 years old, 7% compounded. They all get 7%. The only difference is the fees. And when they go to retire, the person at 1% in fees is going to have $574,000. $100,000 to 574, not a bad. If they added not another dime, pretty amazing. The person at 3% in fees will have $224,000. 77% less money. If you want to win a race and you have a 100-pound jockey on the back of your horse, or you want a 300-pound jockey on the back of your horse, fees at 3% are that. If I said to you, here's a deal, let's do an investment, and here's how I want it to work. You give me the money, you put up all the money, you put up all the risk, I'll put up no money, I'll put up no risk. If you lose, I win, and if you win, I win. And if you win, over the life of the time, I'll get 60% of what you earn. You'd say, I'll never do that in a million years. That's a mutual fund with 3%. It's one of the only industries on earth where they've confused us enough that we don't understand we're overpaying by thousands of percent. You could own the stock market, the S&P 500. You can own a piece of all 500 big companies through like the Vanguard 500. And you get the best of all the business, Apple, Exxon, all these companies. And it costs you 0.17. That means less than 0.2%. If you went to a normal mutual fund, you might own the same companies for 3.17. That's like buying a Honda Accord for $20,000 or $350,000 for the same car. If you pay $350,000, you figure out the person next door paid $20,000, so you go crazy. That happens every day with finances because people don't know how to look at this. So when they read the book, that'll never happen to them again.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, there's so much